The earrings caught the afternoon light streaming through my bedroom window, casting tiny rainbows across the wall. I held them up, admiring the intricate Victorian filigree work, the delicate pearls that dangled like frozen tears. These weren't just jewelry, they were my great-grandmother Eleanor's wedding earrings, passed down through 4 generations of women in our family. The day my grandmother placed them in my hands on my 21st birthday, she'd whispered, "These carried me through every storm, Avery. Now they're yours to keep safe." I never imagined the storm would come from within my own family. It started 3 weeks ago, on what should have been an ordinary Thursday. I'd been organizing my jewelry box, something I did maybe twice a year when procrastination got the better of me. That's when I noticed the empty velvet slot where the earrings always rested. My heart skipped, then hammered. I tore apart my entire room, dumped out every drawer, checked behind furniture, even looked in the bathroom cabinet where I sometimes absent-mindedly left things. Nothing. The last time I'd worn them was at my cousin's wedding 2 months earlier. I distinctly remembered placing them back in their spot, running my finger over the pearls one more time before closing the box. Since then, only a handful of people had been in my apartment. My best friend Sarah, my brother David, and his wife Emily. Sarah had been with me in the living room the entire time during her visit, never once going into my bedroom alone. David had helped me move a dresser, but I'd been there supervising every second. But Emily had been here just last week when I was sick with the flu. She'd insisted on bringing me soup, tidying up while I dozed on the couch. She'd been in my bedroom alone for at least 20 minutes, claiming she was organizing my nightstand so I could reach my medications easily. The thought made my stomach turn, but I pushed it away. Emily wouldn't steal from me. We'd had our differences over the years. She could be materialistic and had made snide comments about my inheritance privileges, but theft? That was a line I couldn't imagine anyone in my family crossing. I decided to investigate quietly before making any accusations. First, I called the local pawn shops, describing the earrings in detail. Nothing. Then I checked online marketplaces, scrolling through endless vintage jewelry listings until my eyes burned. On the 3rd day of searching, my heart stopped. There they were, listed on a specialized vintage jewelry site for $8,000. The seller's username was EmilyRose2019, the same handle Emily used for her Instagram fitness account. The listing description even mentioned details only someone who'd held them would know. The tiny engraving on the back that read EM 1889 and the slight discoloration on one pearl from age. My hands shook as I screenshot everything. The listing had been posted 4 days ago, 3 days after Emily's visit. According to the site, the item was pending sale with delivery scheduled for next week. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Emily had stolen from me, but worse, she'd stolen something irreplaceable. Those earrings weren't valuable just for their price tag, they were my connection to generations of strong women who'd come before me. My great-grandmother had worn them through the Depression, my grandmother through World War II, my mother on her wedding day before she passed when I was 12. I called David immediately, hoping there was some explanation. Maybe Emily had taken them by mistake? Maybe she was selling similar earrings? The phone rang 4 times before he picked up. "Hey, Avery, what's up?" His voice was casual, distracted. I could hear Emily laughing in the background. "David, I need to talk to you about something important. Can you come over, alone? Is everything okay? You sound weird. Please, just come over. It's about Emily." The silence stretched for several seconds. "What about Emily?" "David, please, I'll explain when you get here." He arrived an hour later, and I could tell Emily had interrogated him about the call. His jaw was set, defensive before I'd even opened my mouth. I showed him everything, the empty jewelry box, the screenshots, the matching username. I watched his face cycle through disbelief, confusion, and then something I hadn't expected, anger. At me. "You're seriously accusing my wife of stealing?" David's voice was ice cold, a tone I'd never heard him use with me before. "I'm not accusing anyone, David, I'm showing you evidence. Look at the username, the description, the timing. This is ridiculous." He stood up, pacing my living room like a caged animal. "Emily would never do this. There has to be another explanation. Then ask her. Ask her to explain why my grandmother's earrings are being sold online from her account. Maybe someone hacked her account. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe he stopped, running his hands through his hair. You know what? You've always had a problem with Emily. Ever since we got married, you've been looking for reasons to hate her." The accusation stung because there was a grain of truth in it. Emily and I had never been close. She'd always struck me as superficial, more interested in David's salary than David himself. But I'd kept those opinions to myself for my brother's sake. This isn't about my feelings toward Emily. This is about my stolen property. If she didn't take them, then let's figure out who did. But that listing could be anyone's earrings. Vintage jewelry all looks the same. The engraving, David. The seller mentions the exact engraving. He was quiet for a moment, then his face hardened. "I'll talk to her, but I know my wife, Avery. She wouldn't do this. And when this is all cleared up, you're going to owe her a massive apology." After he left, I sat in my apartment feeling sick. I'd hoped David would be reasonable, that he'd help me get to the bottom of this. Instead, I felt more alone than ever. But I wasn't going to let this go. Those earrings meant everything to me. That evening, I did something I'd been avoiding. I checked my security system. I'd installed a small camera in my bedroom after a break-in in the building last year, but I rarely reviewed the footage. My hands trembled as I pulled up the recordings from the day Emily visited. There it was, clear as day. Emily entering my bedroom, going straight to my jewelry box. She picked up several pieces, examining them, before pocketing the earrings. She even had the audacity to rearrange the remaining jewelry to hide the gap they'd left. I saved the footage to 3 different devices and emailed it to myself. Then I called David again. I have video proof, David. I need you to come back and see this. Avery, stop. Just stop. Emily told me everything. Told you everything? My voice cracked. What did she tell you? She sold her grandmother's earrings online. The ones that look similar to yours. She needed the money for our anniversary trip, wanted to surprise me. You're seeing conspiracies where there aren't any. David, I have her on camera taking them from my jewelry box. You're mistaken. Or lying. I don't know which is worse. The call ended with him hanging up on me. I stared at my phone in disbelief. My own brother thought I was either delusional or a liar. But I had proof. Undeniable proof. I scheduled a family dinner for that Sunday, telling everyone I had important news to share. David and Emily arrived last, her wearing a new designer dress and a smug smile that made my blood boil. My parents, my aunt and uncle, and my cousins were all there. I'd strategically connected my laptop to the television, ready to show everyone the truth. Before we eat, I announced, standing up, I need to address something that's been weighing on me. Emily's smile faltered slightly. David's hand found hers, squeezing protectively. 3 weeks ago, my great-grandmother's earrings were stolen from my apartment. The ones Grandma gave me. The ones that have been in our family for over a century. My mother gasped. Oh, Avery, no! Have you called the police? I wanted to handle this within the family first, I said, clicking play on the video. Because the thief is sitting at this table. The room erupted as the security footage played on the television. There was Emily, clear as day, stealing the earrings. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face darkened. My aunt whispered, "Oh my God." Emily stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. That's fake. She edited that video. She's always been jealous of me, always tried to turn David against me. The timestamp corresponds with your visit, I said calmly. The security company can verify the footage hasn't been tampered with. What happened next occurred so fast that later, when the police asked me to recount it, I had to piece it together from everyone else's descriptions. Emily grabbed her wine glass and lunged at me, smashing it against the side of my head. I remember the explosion of pain, the warmth of blood running down my face, my mother's scream. Then Emily was on top of me, her manicured nails clawing at my face, screaming that I was a lying witch who'd destroyed her life. My uncle pulled Emily off me while my aunt called 911. I sat on the floor, dazed, blood dripping onto my mother's cream carpet. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard David shouting not at Emily for attacking me, but at me for provoking her. "You couldn't leave it alone, could you?" he yelled, cradling Emily as she fake sobbed into his chest. "You had to humiliate her in front of everyone." She stole from me, I managed, my cousin pressing a dish towel to my head wound, and then she attacked me. "You attacked her first with that video. You set her up." The police arrived along with the paramedics. As the EMTs examined my head determining I'd need stitches, the officers took statements from everyone. When they reviewed the security footage from my apartment and saw the multiple witnesses to Emily's assault, they arrested her on the spot. "No," David shouted as they cuffed his wife. "This is a misunderstanding. Avery's lying. The video is fake." "Sir, we have 8 witnesses to the assault," the officer said firmly. "And we'll have tech experts verify the security footage. Your wife is being arrested for assault and battery, with potential charges for grand larceny pending investigation." Emily's tears miraculously dried up as they led her away. The look she gave me over her shoulder was pure venom. "You'll regret this," she mouthed. At the hospital, I needed 12 stitches and a CT scan to rule out a concussion. The doctor documented all my injuries, the gash on my head, the scratches on my face and neck, bruising on my arms where Emily had grabbed me. Photos were taken for evidence. My parents stayed with me, but their support felt hollow. My mother kept saying things like, maybe there was a misunderstanding and families shouldn't involve the police. My father was silent, which was almost worse. David never came to the hospital. Instead, he went straight to the police station to bail Emily out. By the time I was discharged the next morning, she was already free, and the family group chat was exploding with messages. David had sent a long message claiming I'd been planning this for months, that I'd always been jealous of Emily's happiness, that I'd probably planted the earrings in her possession somehow. Several relatives responded with sympathy for him and Emily, not for me. The next few days were a nightmare. David launched a full campaign to discredit me. He called relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, spinning a tale of how I'd always been unstable, jealous, vindictive. He claimed I'd edited the security footage using AI, that I'd been in therapy for delusional episodes, A complete lie. That I'd once tried to break them up when they were dating. Another lie. But David didn't stop there. He went to my workplace. I worked as a marketing director at a nonprofit, a job I loved and had worked hard to get. On Tuesday morning, my boss called me into her office. David had sent an email to the entire board of directors, claiming I was mentally unstable and had violently attacked his wife at a family dinner. He'd included photos not of my injuries, but of Emily's injuries, red marks on her wrists from the handcuffs, which he claimed were from me attacking her. Thankfully, my boss knew me well enough to be skeptical. When I showed her the police report and my own injury photos, she was horrified. But the damage was done. The board was concerned about the drama affecting our organization's reputation. Meanwhile, Emily was playing the victim on social media. She posted constantly about being falsely accused and attacked by a jealous sister-in-law. Her friends rallied around her, sending me threatening messages. Someone even left a dead rat on my doorstep with a note that said liars get what they deserve. I filed for a restraining order and hired a lawyer. The criminal case against Emily was moving forward. The prosecutor had reviewed the security footage and confirmed it was authentic. The earrings had been recovered from the vintage jewelry site before they could be shipped to the buyer. Emily was facing charges for grand larceny and assault. But David wasn't done. He hired an expensive defense attorney for Emily and started recruiting family members to testify on her behalf. He offered our cousin Marcus $5,000 to say he'd seen me give Emily the earrings as a gift. Marcus, thankfully, came to me instead and recorded David making the offer. Then came the revelation that broke my heart completely. My aunt called me one evening, her voice shaking. "Avery, I need to tell you something." David came to me asking me to lie in court. When I refused, he got angry and said something concerning. "What did he say?" I asked, gripping the phone tighter. "He said you didn't deserve the inheritance anyway, that he and your parents had already made sure you wouldn't get all of it." "Avery, I think they've been hiding money from you. My grandmother had left me a substantial inheritance when she passed 5 years ago, not just the earrings, but also money and property. My parents had been the executors of the will, and they'd told me I'd received everything designated for me. But now my aunt's words made me wonder. I hired a forensic accountant to investigate. What they found made me physically ill. Over the past 5 years, nearly $200,000 that should have been mine had been diverted to various accounts controlled by my parents and David. They'd forged documents, created false expenses for the estate, and even sold a rental property that was supposed to be mine, keeping the profits. The betrayal was complete. It wasn't just Emily who'd stolen from me. My entire immediate family had been robbing me for years. I added a civil lawsuit to my growing legal battles. My lawyer was confident we had enough evidence for criminal fraud charges. The security footage of Emily stealing the earrings had opened a Pandora's box of family crimes. The week before Emily's trial, David made one last desperate attempt. He came to my apartment uninvited, pushing past me when I opened the door. "Call it off," he demanded. "Drop the charges against Emily, drop this inheritance nonsense, and we can all move forward as a family. Get out of my apartment." "Avery, you're destroying our family over jewelry and money." "No, David, you destroyed our family when you chose to lie, steal, and defend someone who physically attacked me. Look at my face." The scratches were still visible, pink lines across my cheek. Emily was provoked. "She's not a violent person. She smashed a glass over my head. I have permanent scarring. You'll have a lot worse than scars if you don't drop this," he said quietly. The threat hung in the air between us. I reached for my phone. "I'm calling the police." He left, but not before sweeping my mail off the entrance table, a petty final gesture. Among the scattered envelopes was a letter from the prosecutor. Emily's trial date had been set. The trial was a spectacle. Emily showed up in conservative clothes, trying to look like a suburban soccer mom instead of the designer-obsessed woman who'd stolen family heirlooms. David sat behind her, glaring at me throughout the proceedings. The prosecutor presented the security footage first. Emily's lawyer tried to argue it could have been doctored, but their own expert witness had to admit under oath that the footage was authentic. Then came the evidence from the vintage jewelry site, IP addresses, payment information, even messages where Emily had negotiated with potential buyers. When I took the stand, Emily's lawyer tried to paint me as jealous and unstable. But when the prosecutor showed my medical records, the photos of my injuries, and played the 911 call where you could hear Emily screaming threats in the background while I bled on the floor, the jury's faces told the whole story. The real drama came when David took the stand as a defense witness. He confidently told his rehearsed story about how I'd given Emily the earrings, how I'd been acting erratically for months, how this was all a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Then the prosecutor played the recording Marcus had made of David trying to bribe him. David's face went white. That's taken out of context." "Really? Because it sounds like you're offering your cousin $5,000 to lie under oath. That's witness tampering, Mr. Morrison." Emily's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. David tried to salvage his testimony, but he was rattled. When the prosecutor asked him about the inheritance fraud, Emily's lawyer objected again. It wasn't relevant to this case. But the jury had heard enough. The prosecutor then called 3 relatives David had tried to bribe. Each one testified about David's attempts to pay them to lie. My aunt testified about his threatening behavior and his comment about the inheritance. The prosecution had built a picture not just of Emily's guilt, but of a broader pattern of deception and criminality. Emily took the stand on the last day. She cried on cue, claiming she'd been confused, that she thought I'd said she could borrow the earrings, that the attack was self-defense because I'd come at her first. But under cross-examination, her story fell apart. She couldn't explain why she'd listed them for sale if she'd just borrowed them. She couldn't explain why she'd gone straight to my jewelry box when I was sick. She couldn't explain the messages where she'd told buyers the earrings were from her elderly aunt's estate. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: grand larceny, assault, and battery, attempting to sell stolen goods. Emily collapsed in tears, real ones this time. David shouted that this was a miscarriage of justice, that I'd destroyed an innocent woman. The judge threatened to hold him in contempt. At sentencing 2 weeks later, Emily got 18 months in prison and was ordered to pay restitution. It wasn't just about the earrings. The assault with the glass had elevated everything. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked broken. David wasn't there. He'd been arrested the day before. The recording of him attempting to bribe Marcus had led to his own criminal charges: witness tampering, obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit fraud. When they'd searched his home, they'd found documents related to the inheritance fraud apparently. He'd been sloppy about destroying evidence. My parents' house of cards collapsed next. The forensic accountant's report led to a full investigation. They were forced to pay back everything they'd stolen, plus interest and penalties. The criminal charges were pending, but their lawyer was negotiating a plea deal. They'd probably avoid jail time, but their reputation in our community was destroyed. The extended family was divided. Some supported me, horrified by what David and my parents had done. Others thought I should have handled it privately without involving the law. I didn't care anymore. The people who mattered stood by me. 6 months later, I sat in my lawyer's office signing the final settlement papers. I'd recovered my full inheritance, plus damages for the assault. The earrings were back in my possession, though I could barely look at them without feeling sick. They'd gone from being a symbol of family legacy to evidence of family betrayal. David was serving 8 months in minimum security prison. Our parents had moved to another state to escape the scandal. The family that had once gathered for Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations was scattered to the winds. But I was free. Free from the toxic dynamics, the lies, the people who'd smiled to my face while stealing from me behind my back. The money from the settlement and recovered inheritance meant I could start over anywhere I wanted. I chose the Cayman Islands, at least for a while. I needed distance, both physical and emotional, from everything that had happened. I rented a small beach house and spent my days walking along the sand, letting the sound of waves wash away the echoes of family dinners turned crime scenes. Sarah visited me after I'd been there a month. We sat on the deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Pressing charges, taking it all the way?" I thought about it for a long moment. I regret that it was necessary. I regret finding out that the people who were supposed to love me saw me as a target instead. But standing up for myself? Making them face consequences? No, I don't regret that. Have any of them reached out? My mother sends emails sometimes. Lots of guilt tripping. How I've destroyed the family. How she's suffering. I don't respond. David's lawyer contacted me about a possible reconciliation after his release. I declined. And Emily? Still in prison. She gets out in 4 months with good behavior. David's waiting for her, apparently. They deserve each other. The earrings sat in a safety deposit box back in the States. I couldn't wear them anymore, they carried too much pain. But I couldn't sell them either. They were still my great-grandmother's legacy, even if the family they'd passed through had proven itself unworthy. I'd started therapy to process everything. The betrayal, the violence, the gaslighting. My therapist said I showed signs of PTSD from the assault and the sustained psychological manipulation. Some days were harder than others. Some nights I still woke up feeling the glass shatter against my skull, Emily's nails raking across my face. But most days, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. No more walking on eggshells around Emily's materialism and passive-aggressive comments. No more David making excuses for her behavior. No more parents who viewed me as a bank account rather than a daughter. I'd lost a family but found myself. The inheritance money would let me start fresh, maybe open that boutique marketing firm I'd always dreamed about, or go back to school for my master's degree. The future was wide open, no longer constrained by toxic obligations to people who'd proven they didn't deserve my loyalty. One evening, as I watched the sun sink into the Caribbean Sea, I realized something. My great-grandmother Eleanor had worn those earrings through the Depression, through war, through loss and hardship. She'd survived it all, and in my own way, I was surviving too. The earrings might be locked away, but the strength they represented that lived on in me. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old family photos, then deleted them all. The past was gone. I had mourned it, fought for justice, and now it was time to let it go. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for my own place here, something permanent. Not running from anything anymore, but running towards something new. The waves rolled in, endless and eternal. Somewhere, in a prison cell, Emily was counting days. Somewhere else, David was learning what consequences felt like. My parents were living with their shame. And I was here, scarred but not broken, betrayed but not bitter, finally free to build a life surrounded by people who would never make me question whether their love was real. The earrings had brought me full circle from treasured inheritance to evidence of betrayal to symbol of survival. Maybe one day I'd pass them on to someone worthy, someone who understood that true family isn't about blood but about trust, respect, and genuine love. Or maybe they'd stay locked away forever, a reminder of hard-won lessons about who deserves a place in your life and who doesn't. Either way, I was done looking backward. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly, completely free.